What's going on, everybody? I'm Encore, and this is your daily reminder that tomorrow never comes, meaning none of our tomorrows are guaranteed. So let's stop putting things off for a date in the future and start diving in today. For me and this channel, that's all about crypto and the crypto space and what it has to offer and why I don't think there's any reason to delay. I believe crypto is here to stay. It's only going to grow, become more, we're going to reveal more innovative projects, and it's going to pervade all industries. So I urge all of you to jump in the space, start getting familiar with some of the things within the crypto space, and dip your toe in. And listen, I find it very hard pressed that once you start to get in the space, you'd want to leave, right? So I'm going to start with that. Obviously, anything I ever say is not financial advice, but I'm going to say that these are projects. This is a space filled with projects that you have to be a part of, right? If you want to change your, financial destiny, if you want to change your life as a whole, it's a great place to start. So my whole goal of this channel is to get you guys at least somewhat interested and somewhat educated in the space, and then you dive in, do your own research, and kind of carry on from there. Having said all of that, all right, one of the things I wanted to tackle today is some of the basics. And this was a great place to start. This phrase was actually coined by Vitalik Buterin, who's the founder of Ethereum. It's called the Scalability Trilemma. So this really applies to all projects within the crypto space. And everything's about these three pillars, right? You've got security, you've got scalability, and you've got decentralization, right? So A, B, and C on those portions in this triangle. And a lot of these projects end up having to pick one side of the triangle. It's very difficult and hasn't been fulfilled as of yet, where all three are actually satisfied, right? So some projects will lean heavily towards security and scalability, some will lean heavily towards scalability and decentralization, and some will lean heavily towards security and scalability and decentralization, and some will be security and decentralization. And when I say that they pick a side, it doesn't mean that the other pillar is ignored. It's just lower on the totem pole and maybe not hitting its true form, right? So it may not be completely decentralized, but it's in that realm, okay? It's just we're looking at spectrums of things, right? So they're going to heavily focus more on the purity of security and scalability and lower on the level of decentralization. But it doesn't mean it's not there at all. So just something to think about. So here's a problem that they all have. Now, there are a few projects now who claim that they've solved all three. And that's kind of the goal going forward, is all of them, all these projects, that's the goal. We have to tackle all three so that one side is not used as weakness against them by some other competitor. And it just makes for a better system, right? If all three can be tackled at the same time. But before we even get into scalability, which is really where I want to focus, right? I mean, security, you think about it, it's just, how resistant is a project to being hacked, right? How defensive is it? How protective is it for the users on the platform? Decentralization is, is there a small group of people or one person who is controlling everything within that project or protocol, right? And the purest form, the whole reason for crypto space is the masses control the project, right? It's not a top-down approach to any system or project, it's bottom-up. So the user base kind of dictates where the project goes, right? So that's the purest form within the crypto space. And scalability then becomes the issue, because no matter how good the platform is, if it can't handle more users, then it's never going to reach mass adoption. Or if it does reach mass adoption, but it breaks down all the time, people are going to jump to another project. So scalability is really where, things hit the fan, so to speak. But before we can even understand that, we kind of have to understand some of the layers in crypto and any project, really, right? And you guys may have heard layer ones versus layer twos, and how does it work really? And so really and this is a very simplified version, okay? I'm not going to get heavy into the technical aspect of it at all, but it's really as easy as it sounds in terms of visually, where there's one layer built on top of another layer. Now, there are things that happen in and around the layers, it doesn't have to be one on top of the other, but just for this video, and for simplicity alone, we're going to stick to the fact that there's a base layer, which is a blockchain itself, and then there's a layer 2 that jumps on top that kind of helps out with the things that layer 1 is trying to do, right? It's kind of taking the load off of layer 1. So I wanted to run through real quick on what happens here. And again, the focus here is on scalability, right? So we're going to assume that there is some level of the other pillars, security and decentralization. How would any platform scale? And again, we look back at the 2 layers. You can make changes at the layer 1 level, and you can make changes at the layer 2 level. And layer 1 solutions for that scalability are a lot more difficult to implement than layer 2s, right? So, Ethereum, if you guys have any idea or heard of Ethereum going from 1.0 to 2.0, well, this is what they're doing, is they're actually making a layer 1 change, right, to help with that scalability. And so under layer 1 solutions, you're looking at something called consensus protocol changes and sharding. I know sometimes these things can kind of, go over your head, or you tune out, but just stick with me here. We're going to really simplify this out here. Consensus protocol really is how a blockchain is validated, how it moves forward, right? So from Bitcoin and Ethereum right now, they work on what's called proof of work. So a lot of miners involved with a lot of computational power to solve complex problems, and really just kind of grow the chain out that way, right? Things have to be validated, take some time, and moves forward. Right now, Bitcoin, you're looking at around 7 transactions a second, and Ethereum is about 15 to 20 transactions per second. So not a lot, and that's based on proof of work. So that's not going to work when you have so many users coming on, flowing so much money on it. It's too slow, and it's not able to compete with the Visas, the MasterCards, and the legacy platforms out there. So there is that, right? How do we change from these consensus protocols, from proof of work, to anything else that makes it faster, right? Very difficult to do, but possible to do. Sharding is another one that a layer 1 can implement. So instead of a blockchain being built in sequence, you can kind of break off the transactional information, and so things are being done in parallel. So even from just a shard, just the definition or conceptually what a shard is, if you think of glass or mirror, when it breaks into tiny pieces, each one of those pieces is a shard of the main mirror or glass, right? So same thing with here, you're breaking it off into pieces. It's still connected in terms of conceptually to the main glass or mirror, but now you've got smaller pieces, and in terms of blockchain, it's running transactions within these smaller pieces. So it's not all one big piece trying to get every transaction one after another. You're having all these little pieces of the blockchain kind of working on these transactions in parallel. So sometimes that gets a little bit confusing, but just understand that layer 1 solutions are there. They can be implemented. They're just more difficult, and sometimes they're not the best solution. There's a lot of work involved. And then we move on to layer 2 solutions. So what sits on top, right? So layer 1 and then layer 2. And layer 2 is usually another platform that kind of joins on top and helps out with what the layer 1 is having trouble with. So in this term, scalability, right? And right here is, again, everyone kind of understands what scalability means, right? But there's always little nuances to what that means. And this one was really good. It's just, in terms of, it's referring to the ability to offer a rich experience to every user, irrespective of the total number of users at any given time. So our experience on any platform is vital to that platform continuing to exist and to prosper. If I'm a new user and I come on something and it works great, and then it gains popularity, that platform gains popularity, and it starts to break down, I'm getting a lot of errors, my transactions are taking forever, or they're not going through, any kind of glitches start to add up only because the user base has grown, right? So that's what needs to be solved. And throughput, they talk about transactions per second here. Now I've looked at Visa and their claims for processing speed. And, some have mentioned it's really 1,700. It's not 20,000 transactions per second. But I ran across something recent, January, just this month. that Visa, I think it was the chief financial officer, was saying that not 20,000 transactions per second. They're actually doing 65,000. Yeah, right here, 65,000 transactions per second. Now, whether that's true or not, whether it's 1,700, whether it's 20,000, whether it's 65,000, even though there's big gaps in between those numbers, when you look at Bitcoin being 3 to 7 transactions per second and ETH being 15 to 20, still a big difference, right? So for Bitcoin or ETH or any platform to compete with what we are all used to, it's going to have to be able to scale. And so that's really the big thing, is how can we make it scale more and more and more and be seamless to the user in the process. That's the whole point of that, okay? So that's kind of where I want you guys to just understand, right? Understand this triangle here, and really understand the pillars within it, and how some projects are going to be leaned more heavily towards others. And it's kind of what you have to look into when you see any project, right? Are they focusing more on scalability? Are they focusing more on security and decentralization? All of those things you kind of piece together, and then you decide if you feel comfortable with that project. Now, here's a platform. There's a project called Kadena, which I am a fan of, but that's not the point of this whole image. I wanted to find something that would actually outline certain projects that are more in line with certain sides of this triangle. Okay, so we look down here, Bitcoin and ETH. So what this is saying is that it focuses more on security and decentralization and less on scalability, right? That's ETH here. You guys might be wondering, what is this ETH 2.0? So it's where I talked about how ETH is transitioning. That layer 1 solution for scaling, it's going from proof of work to proof of stake. And that proof of stake is there to help out with scalability. So while ETH 1.0 focuses really here on security and decentralization, ETH 2.0 is going to focus more on decentralization and scalability. So that's an example of a protocol, a layer 1 solution that's difficult to do. Hasn't happened as of yet. Things are in motion, and we'll see how that plays out and when it plays out. But you can see Bitcoin here firmly entrenched in line of decentralization and security. And then you can see these other ones here that aren't so decentralized, more focused on security and scalability. So things like Ripple and Phantom and Solana for sure. And just a bunch of projects here. Now, they have Algorand in here, and that's very interesting, probably because they're competitors. But Algorand is another layer 1 solution that actually states that it solves all three of these: decentralization, security, and scalability. So Kadena is also a layer 1. Algorand is also a layer 1. And so Kadena is positioning itself, at least in this particular image, as being the solution to the trilemma, right? The scalability trilemma, or the blockchain trilemma. But so is Algorand. So, the main goal here from looking at this image is that just understand that projects are weighed heavily in certain areas, right? They haven't yet figured out the secret sauce to serving all three. So that was the main goal, even though they have specific projects here. And then the last one here is really just about scalability. Polygon is actually a layer 2 solution, so it sits on top of a layer 1. In this case, it would be Ethereum. And then you've got Avalanche. Again, putting Avalanche there where it leans more on scalability and not on security and decentralization. Would I put it there? No. But again, you got to remember where this image is coming from. They're competitors. So this is kind of what I wanted you guys to see. Just that within this pyramid, different projects are going to be placed in different places, and you have to understand what those projects are doing and how they fit within this trilemma, so to speak. That's really the main goal, guys. I just wanted to give you some information. Hopefully, this is kind of made clear certain aspects. The thing with crypto is once you jump in one area and try to learn about it, you have to end up learning about a bunch of other things. But trust me, guys, stick with it. The pieces do start to fit. A lot of things seem so fragmented, so alien in the beginning, but it all starts to kind of add up. And to be fully honest with you guys, I'm learning as well. I've been in this space for 2 years, and the learning just continues on and on. There's always something new, and always a different twist on something I may have thought I understood before. So keep listening out there, keep reading, keep researching, and things are going to start to fit. And it's okay if you don't understand everything, or if it's okay if you don't understand a lot of things. That's the point of doing your own research. All right, guys, hope that helped you guys. We'll see you in the next one.